Welcome back to a new episode of Gothic Heart. We have an incredible guest today. This here is Karen Leigh. She is a master practitioner of neuro-linguistic programming, an expert in past life regression, and a timeline therapy practitioner. All right, so if you don't know what any of those things mean, because that's where I began, we're going to learn all about it today with Karen. So we're going to have her introduce herself and learn about all these incredible things. All right, Karen, we're ready.
Yeah, thank you so much. Yes, so everything you just said, that's correct. That's the work I do. I work with women around self-belief and self-worth. Yeah, and using the modalities that you just mentioned, which are powerful, which I'm sure we're going to dig into. I can't wait.
Absolutely, because I feel like all of those words, I mean, I learned them, I looked them up in research, so I knew that it would be like a really cool episode. I do think it almost sounds like we're talking a different language for someone who
Yeah.
doesn't know what those things are. So let's start with the neuro-linguistic programming, NLP, and how it works and what it can do for people.
Yeah. So probably the easiest way for people just to get sort of insight into NLP, Tony Robbins, who's the big motivational speaker, that's what he uses. He's trained in, well, he's the biggest expert in NLP, and he actually works with the people who created NLP. So he's right in there. And when you see him, have you ever watched him when he picks someone from the audience? He completely shifts their perception, their body language, everything changes. He's using NLP. So that's the best way to sort of for someone to think, oh, okay, now I know what that is. But it is just it's a modality that helps change your thoughts and your beliefs, because we feel stuck, we feel like this is just the way I am, and all the I can't, all the negative self-talk that comes in, and we feel like that's just us. And it's not. And that's where NLP comes in and works its magic to help you shift those I can'ts to I cans, and opens up your perception, to see the opportunities and possibilities that were always available to you.
I love that, but you just had some sort of block about them or thought it wasn't
Mm.
possible.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so how did you get into this?
So I had my own coach. I now realize I've had coaches and mentors in the past, and I now know, or I can now see, that they were using NLP, which is amazing. I just didn't know it at the time. They just sort of implemented that into their coaching and their mentoring. But I had a big breakdown about not quite 15 years ago, 12 years ago. And I saw a psychologist, and it didn't really help me at the time. I didn't want to talk about all the awful things that had happened in my life. I was very, outcome focused. I wanted to focus on where I wanted to be, not piecing the puzzles together. And I've nothing against that. If that works for you, amazing. It didn't work for me. I was just wanted to move past that. My attitude was, you can't change the past. Let's acknowledge what's happened in the past, but let's move forward. Let's focus on what I do want in the future. And so as seeing a psychologist didn't help. And I sort of plodded along, did all the personal development work on my own for years. And then during 2020, we all know what happened. I sort of, I guess I sort of reevaluated my life, and I felt very stuck because what I thought I wanted now wasn't what I wanted. And I hired a coach, and she just gave me the biggest breakthroughs. I had so many realizations. We didn't focus so much on the past. It was a case of, let's acknowledge this stuff, but let's move on. Let's learn from it, and let's move on and focus on where you want to be. So that helped me majorly.
Wow. And you weren't specifically looking for NLP. That's just what you happened to
No.
find, and it
Yeah.
worked so well.
Yeah.
Well, so how does one, so if somebody finds themselves and they know that there's limiting beliefs, how would they even go about finding someone who knows how to do this? I mean, you don't see it regularly posted or advertised as helping with mental
Mm-hmm.
health or mindset.
I know. And the thing is that even that label, limiting beliefs, so I talk about that every day, but 5 years ago, I probably hadn't even heard of that label or that phrase, but we all have them. It's just a result of this society that we live in. Generally, most of us have limiting beliefs. But again, like I said earlier, I just thought that's the way I was. I didn't know it was something that I'd taken on. I wasn't born with them. So yeah, that's why you're right. People feel stuck with this and don't know where to turn. I'm so grateful that I found that. I feel like everything happens for a reason. People come onto your radar for a reason, and it's led me to what the work that I'm doing now. And I try and educate people about limiting beliefs and where they come from. Yeah, and that's the main focus of my work is let's work with you around self-belief, because I know that you've got goals, I know that you have things that you want to achieve, but let's dig deep in all the stuff that we need to work around first, and then we'll get you to your goals, because there's no point in feeling good. That's by the time I got to 2020, I'd done the personal development work. My mind was good, I felt good, but I still had all this stuff, all these limiting beliefs and negative thoughts that weren't serving me. So you do need to do the work around them. Yeah, so that's why I make it a focus of my work.
Did you recognize that they were limiting beliefs, like you personally, and went to go fix them? Like you realized something was holding you back?
So not until I worked with this coach a few years ago, that helped me. But really, when I'd done NLP, that's when I realized the significance of
Gotcha.
them. So yeah, I didn't until, because it's such a big part of what NLP does, is focuses on your thoughts, your beliefs. Often we don't have empowering beliefs, it is limiting beliefs. So yeah, until it's about 2.5 years ago, I trained in NLP, and that's really when I realized, that I came across that term limiting beliefs and
It
how
all came together.
significant it was in my life, because I've really suffered with them throughout my teens and my 20s.
Gotcha. So much. I see it all the time. I mean, even entrepreneurs. I'm an entrepreneur. I own my own jewelry company. We create custom jewelry, and a lot of the times in fellow entrepreneur groups, it's always, this is the mindset you need to have. This is what you need to do, or you need to believe you can do it. You need to go get it. And I see so many people unable to take that step. So that's an interesting. It's just to see, like, for people who can't take that step, maybe this is an option.
Yeah, because it's
Interesting.
often it's the thing that does leave us feeling stuck, doesn't it? It's not having enough belief in themselves and their capabilities. Even if they want that thing, and they might feel really excited about it. Yeah, and I do think, just take that first baby step, because it gives you more confidence and more belief that with each little baby step that you take.
I see it in my kids all the time too. And it's so foreign to me, because at least at this point of my life, I know I could do anything if I figure it out. And
Yeah.
it's so crazy when they're like, I can't do it. You did it
Uh-huh.
yesterday. So
Yeah.
I see it in my kids. That's so interesting. So, okay. So you talked about the past is the past. So let's move on with these limiting beliefs. Through NLP, try to reprogram our mindset. So then, but on the other hand, you also do past life regression. So how do we tie these in together? How do they work best?
So part of my training in NLP was hypnotherapy. So
Okay.
I mean, they're both working with the subconscious mind. Hypnotherapy is just more on a deeper subconscious level. You're in a trance-like state, so that we can speak to the unconscious mind. We want to bypass the ego and the conscious mind. So that's what hypnotherapy does. So yeah, that was just part of my training, but it was definitely one I was intrigued by, because I'm just fascinated by the subconscious mind and what's in there, because all the resources that we need are in there, all the confidence, everything. So I love that we get to access that through hypnotherapy as well. And I know a bit about obviously your background and being a bit alternative, and I am as well. So you wouldn't know, I'm quite I'm quite feminine in the way that I dress, and when I'm in the house, I'm listening to rock music, and I've got my red lipstick on, and yeah. So and I've got my crystals, and so there's a little bit of a quirk to me that I wanted to bring out with past life regression, because I'm very interested in all the witchy stuff and the crystals, and I go to women's circles, and I love all that stuff. And I did, with my work, I try and keep it very much on our focus, which is, self-worth, self-belief, using NLP and hypnotherapy. But I wanted to bring in past life regression because it is a little bit of my personality, bringing that in, and also my audience, because they've got their little quirks and their sort of witchy sides. a huge part of my audience, and I work with women generally as well. So yeah, I wanted to bring past life regression in as an option for them, and it actually proved very popular, more than I thought. So it's just a form of hypnotherapy, but we're obviously going back to past lives to access, any. It could be out. Some people do it out of curiosity. But I always say set an intention anyway, because there will be learnings there. So it might be they might set an intention. I want to understand my relationship with my partner or my mum or my friend, or why do I keep repeating the same patterns? So it means that we can, when we're doing the past life regression, we can ask those questions and take the learnings or take any sort of insights that we can use going forward.
That's amazing. I'm so excited to hear about your alternative interest side because I mean, everything when I'm talking to you or anybody else, I want to be able to apply it to our listeners. So you are almost a living study of this and how to balance your alternative side with your professional side and how you're actually tying some of that in. And just it's all about how we can be more comfortable with ourselves, which is exactly what you work on with these things. But also, I love that you're bringing in a little bit of the of that with the past life regressions too. So is that so? And before we had introduced with timeline therapy. So does that go with that, or what is the difference?
So timeline therapy is completely different, and
Okay.
I'd said earlier, but I try and educate people on what these are and what they're for. And obviously, like I said, I talk a lot about limiting beliefs and self-worth, and then emotions come into it as well, because every belief that we have, we've taken on that belief subconsciously, we've taken it on, but it stems from an emotion. So it's the same with decisions. Think of all the decisions we've made out of anger or out of fear, or maybe decisions that we haven't made because of fear that's held us back. So every decision that we're making is emotionally driven, and timeline therapy allows us to get to the root of the emotion. So if we're generally, someone who lives in fear, or maybe we don't navigate anger very well, or sadness is a depressive emotion. And if we're, habitually making decisions, then actions, habits out of sadness, it's not really going to serve us very well. And often it can be a default emotion. So that's where timeline therapy comes in. It's a process where the client has their eyes closed throughout, although we're not going as deep as hypnotherapy, but we're working with the subconscious mind to get to the root. And it's actually, it's not past life regression, but often when we're getting to the root, our subconscious might throw up something that happened 5 generations ago, because it just wants you to acknowledge. It's just like a metaphor. So it might be that our root cause of anger is, passed down generational, from our great grandmother. It's anger that's been passed down, and our subconscious is saying, look here, you need to acknowledge this, and we need to take the learnings from this. So timeline therapy, some people see it as a little bit out there because of that, and they're like, don't really understand why it's taking me back to, but I always say, just go with it. It's just your subconscious mind giving you something to work with so you can get to the root of this emotion.
So that gosh, I wanted like all 3 of these. I feel like they have interesting or like perfect benefits for specific things in my life, right? Of course, we want to everything you're saying, obviously we hope is relating to someone, but I definitely see kids, husband, myself. So how do you know? Okay, so you work with women, etc. So when they come to you, how do they know what they're going to need, or do you tailor it to them? And how do you decide?
Yeah, so sometimes they do, because I'm talking about this every day, on my stories, and trying to, like I said, education is a big thing for me. I don't want to say, I do hypnotherapy and it's amazing, or timeline therapy. I want people to actually understand, what these modalities are, because I believe in them. I had to undergo everything that I do with others. I had to undergo myself, and I felt the benefits of it as well. So I really, this is something I feel really strongly and passionately about, and I know it can help others, but I want them to understand what it's for, the benefits. It's not a magic wand, it's they need to meet me halfway as well. So often they resonate with one more than the other, and that's good. If they come to me and say it's definitely timeline therapy that I want, and we'll have that conversation, and I'll say, yeah, I think you're right. I think that's, or I might say, I don't know, I think maybe hypnotherapy might be best, although it's very rare that I need to do that. But yeah, and sometimes people say, look, I just feel really stuck. Like, I don't want to feel this anxiety anymore. And we'll have that initial conversation, and I'll give them the options. And if they don't know, then I can recommend what I think would be best for their situation. But often, I would say 90% of the time they come to me and say, I've heard you talking about hypnotherapy, and I think that's what's
Gotcha.
going to help me.
I just love all the different options that you provide. And I know I'm jumping all over the place, but I'm just so many questions keep popping in my head. But so for the NLP part, when you're working with someone, does that just sort of change their inner voice to more of a confident, or I can do this? Or is it something more subconscious than that?
So all of this, so hypnotherapy and past life regression is a form of hypnotherapy. Timeline therapy and NLP, the one thing they all have in common is they all work with the subconscious mind. So that's generally my work is, that's what I do, work with your subconscious mind. And with NLP, so NLP, if I'm working with someone, say for 6 weeks, and we're doing NLP coaching, it will be specific questions. So we can get results in one session, which then obviously really helps us going forward, because then we've sort of progressed. We can sort of get nearer to our goal, so by the 6th week, if I'm working with someone for 6 weeks, by the 6th week they're off, they're focused on their goal, they've overcome the blocks, and they're well on their way. That first session is asking specific questions. So NLP, obviously, it's Neuro-Linguistic Programming, so it's very clever with wording. And we're talking about the problem. So we establish, okay, what's your problem? Is it anxiety? What's underlying that? Where does it come from? We kind of establish what the problem is. And then that's what we call it from that moment forward. Okay, when was this problem not in your life? When is this problem in your life? Who's around? We ask all of these questions to try and get a bigger picture. But that's it. We just want to establish what the problem is, and we want to tackle it using clever NLP coaching techniques and wording, asking the right questions. And as I said, by the end of that first session, often you see a complete shift in perspective, and they can see things a lot more clearly.
Do they notice? Like, can they tell? Like, oh, I am looking at this differently.
Yeah, and they'll see it. Yeah, you see it. So I can tell by their physiology anyway, and I can see their mind going, but they'll always message after and say that I feel so much better already, and I can, and it's making connections. It's like, oh, my dad said something to me one time. Oh my goodness, that's where that comes from. And that's a realization in that moment that they've never had before.
Okay. Well, so explain to us then. I mean, I'm taking this personally and applying it to my life, but as a broad spectrum, explain to us how what you do with all of the different options that you offer, how that can really help someone with their, individuality or staying true to themselves, right? And boundaries, right? Especially if people aren't understanding them. Sort of the main themes that we're always going on about, as far as, well, you've experienced it, how to, keep your personality and blend it with societal norms and your profession, et cetera. So for everyone else that's going through that, what could they benefit, or what kind of gains, and what would be the right places for them to start?
I would say, if they're, no matter what stage they are in their journey, is to shut off external noise and to listen within. I think that's so important, because we can often think, okay, what do I need to do, or what do I have to do? No. What do you want to do? What feels good for you? That can be hard. It's often we need to sort of rewire our mind to think that way. There's lots of ways you can do it. Obviously, you can work with a coach, but you can also meditate or journal. There's lots of ways to get you started, and start asking yourself the right questions. What is it? What feels good? What's that little pull that you feel that you suppress because you think, I can't might come in, or you feel like you might be letting someone else down. And get curious about that. And when we start thinking, oh, but even the fear of judgment, there's so much external noise that comes in, and that's why we suppress things. So I say, listen to what's in here. What's the little pull? And also, when you think about what that pull is, or I'd love to be that, or do that, or feel that, what's the negative self-talk that comes in and tells you why you won't be able to do that? And just get curious. I would say start there.
All right. All right. And so would you talk about hiring a coach if needed? That's would be something a coach would be what you are called? Is that how
Yeah.
we okay. Like, what is the title that we call you? Okay. So, but someone who can assist with that. Well, then can you do that virtually, right? Or is that something you can only do in person, or like the hypnotherapy, or how does that work in this day and age?
So I actually work 95% online.
Okay.
And all of my training was online. I think during 2020, when everything did go remote, I think we realised that it can be done.
Yes.
I know that I trained in January 2022, and I know that they used to do it, solely in person. I don't think they believed that it could work online, and it did. And yeah, I think they're amazing at what they do. They always they're very complimentary to me, and I say I learned from the best, and it was online, and yeah.
Okay, so you can have clients all over the world.
Yeah, which is amazing. Yeah, people can access these services from anywhere in the world, which is amazing.
That is very incredible, especially when it's not necessarily widely advertised or known if somebody offers what you offer. I mean, sometimes it's worded in a different way or something, right? Because in how many people I've seen, researched, or talked to about the podcast, no one has ever mentioned NLP until you. So
Wow.
it's probably more or less publicized than it is, right? Or I mean, I don't watch a ton of Tony Robbins. Does he say that about himself?
I don't think he does.
Yeah.
I don't think yeah, it's funny, isn't it? And yeah, it probably, so I feel like we need to give it some credit. So I do talk about NLP a lot. But I guess you don't need to, it's like, people probably don't know. I didn't know until I started reading his books that it was NLP that he was trained in. And that's what he was using. So I guess you don't need to know that, but I feel like it needs some credit.
Yeah, I mean, especially if you're looking for someone for that kind of help, it's going to be really hard to find if people don't mention it. So I think what you're talking about, and educating and making sure people know, I mean, that's making the accessibility for people much greater, which is a huge thing I'm passionate about, is that people have accessibility to the things that they want, and it's not only available to one type of person or something like that. So that's really cool that you offer all of that. I feel like it's almost you have the ability to have us time travel when you're talking past life regression, or even if timeline therapy comes up previous generations. So I just think the possibilities are so exciting there.
Yeah.
Do you have any advice for any listeners, or me, or if you just met someone in a coffee shop or something, what would your advice be if they mentioned they were interested or had things they wanted to work on?
Yeah, I would always say, so what I said earlier about just listening to within, that's a big thing for me. There's an NLP technique actually, and it works with values, and it's about understanding what our core values are. So it might be freedom, might be a value that someone has. They need to feel, whether it's lifestyle, location, financial freedom, whatever it may be. And I would be asking, okay, so what's currently in your life or your career that's given you that? And often the word, they would say, oh, well, no, I don't really have that lifestyle freedom. And that's probably why they're feeling unfulfilled or feeling stuck, because that's one of their core values. And they're not doing anything, they're not creating anything in their life to fulfill that. So we need to sort of understand what are our values, and we're not taught this. So we don't know until you know. But yeah, I would say advice. Listen within, and what's your values? What's going to make you feel fulfilled, and then start creating your life around that. Because you don't need to, create your life around your work or your location. You can actually do the other way around. Create your life and your work around what feels good for you.
I just had a giant light bulb go off over my head because when I left corporate, and launched my own company, that's exactly what I did. I said, why am I doing this? I had, my kids needed me, my parents needed me, et cetera. And it was like, what am I optimizing for? Well, I want, flexibility in time, right? So I'm not working all the time. Obviously everybody would want, financial freedom, or at least flexibility where they're not stuck, and, have what I wanted to be able to provide for my kids or do for myself. And then I actually have that list up in my house, or up in like where I work. And I use that as well, if I'm trying to make a decision with anything, I'm like, well, is it going to serve this list? So I never even realized that's something that's NLP until you just said that right now. But literally, and it took me into my 40s to apparently get this. But everything else I was doing was just, it definitely wasn't. I mean, it was serving me, and my family financially, but in no other way. I was never home and never be able to be with the kids, etc. So that's a light bulb when you said that, because that's exactly it. Like, these are the things I want out of life. And so every decision I'm making going forward is, I mean, to the best of my ability, is it going to serve this? If not, well, then we're not gonna do it.
Yeah,
So that's
it's so funny because I've got the list on my desk too. And if ever I'm feeling a bit off, or just feeling frustrated, I'll the same. I check down and like, oh, okay, well, I'm not really fulfilling this one, so maybe that's why I'm feeling a bit off. So yeah, that's funny that you've done the
that's
same.
awesome. So I didn't even realize, but apparently, so like you said, I mean, NLP, it could be like, in there and we don't even realize it. So that's a perfect example too. Oh, that's crazy. Like, when I'm like even just booking my schedule for the day or something, I'm like, well, this isn't going to provide me flexibility if I'm booked morning to night or whatever every week, which is one of the core things I was trying to optimize for or make for my life. So that's I mean, I love that you gave that advice as a starting point, or for anybody that's listening. I mean, what is it that you really want out of life? And then, is everything you're doing catering to that? Well, my job certainly wasn't catering to flexibility to help out or take care of issues with my kids, or when my parents were becoming disabled and helping them. Like, there was a lot of travel involved, or working like a 9 to 9 and traveling all the time. That wasn't going to be conducive to it. So that was an easy one. I'm sure there's much harder ones, but for anybody on the call, that advice, I mean, that's exactly what I did. You did. I mean, it definitely helped me. So I love that advice. Oh, that was great. Last, I don't want to forget to mention that you have a podcast. Yes, where we can learn so much more than what we were able to talk about here. So do you want to tell us a little bit about that so we can make sure to subscribe?
Yes. So it's the Spirit, Mind and Soul podcast, and it's actually guests that I have on talking about their times through hardships and challenges. And the purpose of it is, they're all different backgrounds, all different stories. They've all used different healing modalities to help get them through those times. And it's just to show that anyone can overcome anything, no matter how hard things get. There's always a way. I find my guests really inspiring. They've, been to the darkest depths of depression or injury or whatever it may be, trauma. And they've come through the other side, and they're doing amazing work now to help other people as well. And it's just, just showing people you don't need to go, like I said, I saw a psychologist, 12 years ago. And back then, no one was really talking about spiritual coaches or hypnotherapy, or, it was there, but, it was more sort of formal counselling or therapy, that type of thing. And that's not the only way. There's lots of things for, whatever your situation is and whatever you resonate with as well. And it's to normalize it, to say that this is okay, and it's okay to ask for help, and look how amazing life can be when you go and get the help that you need.
I love that. And I mean, it's something that is a perfect theme, and something we bring up on the Gothic Heart all the time, is because not everyone has responded to psychology or psychiatry or anything. And we had, you brought us some amazing options that people can now think about and see if they resonate with. We've had a guest on that was talking about ancestral veneration and ways that can help. We brought on some holistic helping. I've got a Reiki one coming up. So there's so many options. And I love this, because before there was no options, or even insurance didn't even cover mental health if we go back far enough. You know what I mean? So the fact that it's finally starting to come, and we've got all these different options for all these different types of people, right? Not just the people that fit the mold that society wants to. So I love that you're a part of that, and educating us and me and all of us. And For any listeners that, want to learn more, or her podcast or her website or anything about that, we're going to have all of that in the show notes. And then I just have a last question. It's just, so, I mean, I understand you discovered this, you went through it and you had a passion and that's what made you do it. But what were you doing before?
So I was in corporate as well. So I was studying business and marketing at university during 2020. I was in my third year, and that's when I thought, I don't want to. Why am I doing this? I don't want to. It was never coming from in here. There's a perfect example of me doing something just to tick that box.
Because society says this is what you do. You go to university, you get a career, you get a job. 100%. I love that you were able to figure it out that soon. And part of what we're doing here is hoping that other people can figure it out sooner and they don't get into 40s with kids like I do. But well, I mean, it's never too late. It's never too late.
Well, I'm 38 and I graduated a few years ago. So I was in my 30s with kids as well when I did it. So you can do it. So yeah, you can do it at any age. You can do anything. But always listen to in here and
Yep. I mean, some people think I was crazy leaving a corporate job at 40 and starting my own company from scratch. I mean, sure, it was crazy, but it's still the right thing for me and optimized to my list of what I want out of life for my family and my kids. So everybody's different. I guess that's the moral of the story, right? And I love there are so many parallels with our stories, with our transitions and how we came about it, and just the kids and optimizing our life and our alternative interests. So I love that. You've been a really fun guest. Is there anything I missed that you want to share before we go?
No, I don't think so. I think I've really enjoyed our conversation. Yeah, it's funny that there are those parallels, and I hope it shows others that they can go and do it as well.
There's so many options in this day and age. Maybe not, 50, 60 years ago, but now that's what we're here to show people. All right. Well, great. We're going to link everything below. Please make sure to like, follow, subscribe, and share this with people who may not know all these other options are available. And that's how we can keep going and keep bringing all these amazing guests on. So thank you all for listening, and we'll see you next time.